Welcome, my sunshines, to your session with me, Dr. Deborah Brown. So excited to talk to you this week. How are you doing? Today is your first session. So, this is where you get to know the process and you get to know my thoughts about how we're going to get started to work together. Here in your weekly sessions, we'll discuss a multitude of exciting and interesting things. We're going to talk about self esteem, family dynamics, relationships, maybe love and sex, identity and breaking patterns, and thinking about what you can change in your life that actually will make a difference. We're going to be growing the little seed that is you into the lovely tree you wish to be. So, how are we going to work together? This is going to be just like therapy in the way that we do it, is that we're going to get to know each other. We are going to do 53 minutes every week, and I'm going to give you a lot of ideas about things to think about. So, in every episode, there's going to be some truth bombs, some information and secrets that come from all of the years of experience that I have dealing with patients and experiences. The names and some details will be changed to protect the innocent, but there will be some things that are surprising and interesting. I'm going to give you statistics once in a while. I'm a researcher by nature, but I'm going to sort through it all and give you the most interesting and applicable and the most useful information. I'm also going to sort through the muck of the self help world. And there are so many books out there and so many podcasts and just so much stuff that it's daunting to know who to trust, who to listen to. And I'm going to look and find the most psychologically sound sources for you. And I'm always going to share them with you. So you don't have to sort through, I'll do it for you. We're going to talk about books. We're going to talk about poetry. We're going to talk about art. Those things help us to think differently. Those things remind us of who we are. And we all need those things. And every time there's going to be a takeaway, just like in real therapy, where every time you leave therapy, you should be thinking about something that makes you make maybe the tiniest little change or maybe see yourself from another angle. And then we're always going to talk about what we're going to do next at the end so that you know what to look forward to and what's going to happen next week. You might hear things that resonate. You might hear things that you go, wow, oh my gosh, that's so me. Or you might hear things and go, oh, that's my partner. Or my mom. It's always our mom. And those things are going to be useful because it gives you a different lens to go back out into your life after we talk and use what you know now or what you can see differently to either make changes or understand yourself or somebody near you better. So I'm going to ask for your ideas. We have an Instagram site, and you can find that link in the podcast bio. And I'm going to ask you for ideas about what you think you need to work on. And we're going to incorporate those into our episodes. So we're going to talk about things like, do I need therapy? Or what is this mental health disorder thing all about? Do I have a disorder or am I just having a mood? We're going to sort all of those types of things out in coming episodes. So sit back, listen, take what you want, take what you need. It's kind of like a buffet. There are a lot of things that we're going to talk about, but you're only going to take the things that really work for you or make sense for you. So once a week, we're going to talk about you and learning the truth about you, because that's what we're really here for, is to help you see the reality of who you really are, what you really might need to change, and what you also need to accept, because there's a big difference in those two things. It's two different approaches. And we're going to talk about that. So, why do people come to therapy? That's one of the big questions that I get when I'm at a dinner or a cocktail party or out with friends. People want to know, what do people need? Why are people there? What are people's problems? And I can tell you it's actually pretty interesting. There is a common theme that runs through almost all of the people that I've worked with over the years. Now there are some outliers, and those are the fun ones we'll probably talk about at some point, but most people come in with the same story. And these are the words that I hear. I'm overwhelmed. I'm tired. I'm unhappy. I'm not like other people, and I'm alone. And also, I hear, I don't have the life that I want. So think about it. Have you ever said any of those things? I'm overwhelmed. I don't have the life that I want. I'm tired. I think most of us have. But a lot of the people that go to therapy go because those things get so big that it blocks out the sun and they can't see anything else. So what we what we talk about is, what do you actually want? We're not just going to mediate your symptoms and make you feel better. We want to get to the root of, what are the things that you actually need to feel better? What's actually wrong? Is it outside of you? Is it inside of you? And I can tell you, it's usually a little bit of both. But the takeaway from all of this is that people are lost. We can't find our way. And we don't have a lot of people in our lives sometimes to guide us. So therapy is a guide. I'm going to be your guide through this journey. Now, this isn't real therapy. This isn't a substitute for therapy. This is just an opportunity for you to get a glimpse of what therapy might be like, and also to begin to examine yourself to see if maybe you do need therapy, or maybe you just need to think differently about yourself. But either way, it's a win. So, who comes to therapy? I can tell you it's everybody. Over the years that I've been doing this, we see everything in our practice. And in my practice, we've seen kids, adults, families, couples of all types, and people of all ages. It's really exciting. There are a lot more senior citizens coming. There are a lot more men coming. There are a lot of people coming to therapy that didn't come before. So that's a really exciting change. On my patient caseload, I do a lot of work with couples, sexuality, gender, trauma, relationships in general, and even a few celebrities and influencers. They have problems just like us. So if you think about it, who needs it? Humans. So let's look at the podcast that way. Who would listen to this podcast? Well, if you're human, that's okay. That's really all you need. It doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your sexuality or your age. You will find something here that resonates just from a human perspective. And talking about statistics, we mentioned earlier that I'm going to share some. This is the biggest one I'm ever going to share with you. And it's that 1 in 4 people has a diagnosable mental health disorder. 1 in 4. Think about that for a minute. Every room that you're in, with your family, with your friends, at work, look around. If there are 4 of you there, 1 of you meets the criteria for a diagnosable mental health disorder. And that's serious. A mental health disorder is defined by feeling so bad that your functionality is disrupted. 1 in 4 people walk through the earth right now, in America at least, feeling so bad that they can't function, struggling to get up every day, struggling in their relationships, struggling to smile when they don't feel so great on the inside. 1 in 4. That's the statistic. What I actually believe from my experience is that it's higher, and it's probably a lot higher. So I want you to really think about that, because if it's you, or if it's the people around you, it changes everything, because it means you're not really living life the way that is the best way, or the way that you should be living, or you could be living. And that is so sad to me. That's exactly why I do what I do, is because having been a person with severe mental illness and being that 1 in 4, and knowing that it's terrible and that nobody should have to walk around like that when they don't have to, when there are ways out. And maybe if this podcast is just a way to get you to think about that, when you look at the people around you and you see disorders, or you look at yourself and your functionality is changing, then maybe you'll think about it differently and think, I don't have to stay here, right? Chester Bennington, he was the lead singer of Linkin Park. Most of you probably heard about him. I think it was 2017. And his story is that he was a rock star and that he ended his life by suicide. That's kind of the story. But the story that you don't hear was that he was molested as a child, that he was abused as a child, that he was so seriously mentally ill that he coped with drugs, with alcohol, and was addicted to substances for a lot of his adult life. This was a brilliant, talented, gifted, funny, sweet person who lost his life. And one of the things that he said was he said that his mind was like a neighborhood that he didn't want to go walking around in alone. And that really resonated with me. I remember seeing that interview after he died and thinking, how many of us are walking around feeling like that? And how many of us culminate that thought in behaviors that don't serve us? Maybe not suicide, maybe not addiction, but maybe just things like watching too much TV or avoiding going out with your friends or not really functioning at work. It doesn't always go that far, but it can go there. So it's important to think about your mental health, right? You'll see a lot of talk now where people are talking about mental health is as important as physical health. Well, they're connected. And we're going to talk a little bit about why a little bit later. So, why are we so lost? Why are we as Americans so lost and so sad? 1 in 4, right? That's a lot. I have some beliefs about that, and I'm going to share them. And I think that the first one is that we live differently in the modern world than most cultures live or most cultures have lived. And if you think about it, there were elders. When you had a baby, when you lived in a tribe, and I'm not going to get specific because it's kind of a general idea, is that there were elders. There were women that had had babies and that had raised babies and knew how to show you how to do that. If you were a hunter, you went out with the other hunters and they showed you how to hunt and you learned how to hunt. You had people that not only told you what to do, but had done it themselves and could show you hand over hand how to do it and support you as you figured it out. Think about your own upbringing in your own life. Were there elders? Are there elders now? I know I didn't have any, or not many. And we find those people and we seek them out naturally. But unfortunately, we don't have elders, we have influencers. So what do? We go to social media and we say, tell me about how I should feel. Tell me about what I should do. And the problem with social media is anybody can walk in, anybody can set up a camera, and anybody can tell you what you should be doing. And that's a very, very dangerous game. Now, when you're an adult, you can sort through it. You can see what resonates. You can see what doesn't. And sometimes we can get a little swayed in the wrong directions. But when you're a child, that's a very, very, very dangerous thing. There are things like pro-ana websites that are things that espouse pro-anorexia behaviors that a lot of our children are falling into. And that's not even the worst of it. But what I really am trying to illustrate the point is that we need mirrors. We need accurate mirrors in our life to show us and reflect to us who we are and remind us of where we should be going. And not should in a negative way, like you should be more beautiful, you should be thinner, you should be richer and more successful. No, just mirrors that show us what we really believe and who we really are and how we should be aligning with it. That's the only should I'm ever going to give you. You should be aligning to what you actually believe and what your actual values are. And that's what we should be doing. So if I say something to you and I reflect back what I believe you've said to me in therapy, and I remind you of your values, and you go, oh, that's true, but that's not how I'm living. That's where the change is. So if you say to me, I really love nature, but you never go outside, I'm going to mirror back to you and say, but you love nature. Why is that not in your list of things you do? And I think that's what we need influence to do, is to be reminded of who we are and to act on that and behave from it. And there is no one path. And anybody that tells you that, whether it's through a book or a podcast or a therapist or a parent or a friend or a partner, there is no one path to happiness. There's no one path of how we live. There's no one real truth about how you're supposed to be in this world. It doesn't exist. And sometimes religions tell us that. Sometimes our parents tell us that. But now, as grown-ups, we don't have to hold all of those things as true. We get to question everything, and I want you to. And I want you to think about what's your path. But in order to find that, you have to dismantle some of the things inside of you, some of the things that you learned, some of the things that you believed, and some of the things that you think are absolutes, or your subconscious mind holds on to and you don't even know it. So let's talk about what that means, our ideals. I'm Gen X. I grew up in a time when there was this idea of what our parents did or what they thought we were supposed to do. And it was, you get married in your 20s. If you're a woman, you marry a man. If you're a man, you marry a woman. There was no other option. And then you have kids. And by the time you're 30, you've got 2.3 at least kids. You buy a house. You get a job. Maybe as a wife, you stay home, but your husband has a job. He has a good job. You work 9 to 5. You come home. You watch TV. On the weekends, you do the yard. Once in a while, you get to take a trip. Your kids are perfect. Nobody is addicted to anything. Nobody sticks out. And for 40 years, you stay at your job, and for your whole life, you stay at your house, and you do all the things you're supposed to do. That ideal is so heavily embedded in a lot of people, so much so that they compare themselves to it. I have people that come to me who are getting divorces, who are devastated, even though they know that the divorce is the best thing. It's the gateway to their new life because the person they're with is not good for them. But they feel like they're a failure, and we explore why. And how can you be a failure if you're making a choice that's good for your life? But they realize that that's not what they were taught, that you're supposed to stay forever. You're supposed to have a certain kind of life. So I want you to take a minute and I want you to think about, what ideal do you measure yourself against? What is the ideal that you believe you're supposed to maintain? Is it about what your body looks like? Is it about how much money you should be making? Is it about who you should be marrying? I have seen so many people who fail at dating so hard because they have all of these ideas about the person that they meet and the level of perfection they're supposed to have. And the most awful things I hear about dating are things like, he's amazing, but he's just a plumber. Or he's amazing, but he's only 5'7". And I think, what a dreadful way to think about someone is by subtracting the things that don't match your perfect. And boy, does that affect how we make decisions about relationships. I say you choose the person you want to hang out with. Choose the person that feels like a slumber party every night of your life. Choose the person who makes you laugh and who makes you feel safe. If he's not 6 foot, does it matter? So think about your own ideals. And the crazy part of this is that our ideals are set up for us and reinforced for us every single day. And we buy it hook, line, and sinker. Turn on your TV and flip through the channels, any channels, and you'll see people that look the same. I discovered something the other day. I was watching something and I realized that there's a kind of plastic surgery that's happening now that's making a lot of famous women look exactly the same. And it's so interesting to me because I'm not anti-plastic surgery. I'm actually pro anything that makes you feel good about yourself or connects you to who you are. But why does everybody look like Megan Fox now? When did we decide that there was a certain epitome of beauty that everybody needed to look like? What about the dark skinned girls? What about the round girls? What about the short girls and the tall girls? Some of us are never going to look like that, even if we did have the money for plastic surgery. So, do we have to walk around feeling not good enough because we don't look like that? I refuse to. What about you? So, there's a refreshing way to cleanse your palate. Go to Walmart, go to the supermarket, sit on a bench and watch people walk by. That's what people actually look like. Not like your TV, not like movies. What people actually look like is in front of you every single day. And yet you still will compare yourself to the people that you see on TV or in magazines or on social media. And that's that's real. It's a small percentage of the population. But go look at your family that you love that don't look like that and extend that same courtesy to yourself, because the reality is that most of us are never going to be rock stars or supermodels. And if that's the standard you're measuring yourself to, you're going to come up short every time. So we have to find real perspective. And that's one of the things we're going to work on is I am never going to be a professional ballet dancer. Never, never, ever. And if I walk around thinking that I'm a failure because I'm not going to be that, or a supermodel, or anything of the sort, if I start looking at myself and going, I should be those things, I could have been those things if I had only worked harder, which is preposterous. I can't even walk on my own 2 feet. So if you think about becoming something, think about becoming something that's actually meaningful to you, not some ideal that the world tells you that you have to be. There's a surge, from what I understand, in people going to trade school versus college. What a wonderful thing is that for the longest time, there was this strong belief that the only way you could be successful was to go to college. So, what about people that do the practical things that we need every day? What about the creative people? Everybody has value, and that value is not determined by how much money you make or how beautiful you look. Sounds like those are very simple concepts that we all should know. And maybe you do know them. Maybe you espouse them. Maybe you say them to people. But what do you really feel? So I want everybody to look inside of themselves and think about, there's a space between where you want to be and where you are. There always is. What are you measuring that against? What is that space between leading to that you may never achieve? Now, keep in mind, we live our whole life in the space in between where we are, where we picture that we should be. The space in between is where we live our entire lives. So think about that. Do you waste another second thinking that someday when I arrive, that my life is going to be great? I'm going to tell you a secret. You're already here. You will have moments that you arrive into earning something, having something, being something, but you are arriving every morning when you open your eyes. It's not a moment that we're building up to. So, we are going to talk about celebrating the uniqueness, celebrating the things about you that might be broken or twisted or bent, and talking about authenticity. There are teachers of authenticity everywhere you look. You just really have to look for them and attach to them. A lot of creative people, a lot of artists. These people are people that are great examples of authenticity. People that are unapologetically different. The people with the purple hair. The people that are writing the book that you're reading. And there are people out there that are being themselves and being different. And when you think about it, who do you compliment? You don't compliment the girl who looks like everybody else. You don't go up to the girl that looks like every other 30-year-old girl with the long straight hair and the boots and the scarf and go, wow, you look amazing. You don't. You go up to the person that has the wild hair and go, wow, I love that purple in your hair, right? That's what most of us do. We're drawn toward the unique. We're drawn toward the different. But with ourselves, I see so many people, men and women, who work so hard to assimilate and look like everyone else. And there's value in that. There's comfort in that, I guess, that you fit in. But since when is fitting in more important than aligning to who you are? And I think of this woman that I see. There's a diner near me, and I see her. She's there a lot. And whatever her color is everywhere. If she's wearing pink, everything from her feet to her head is pink of one shade or another. And she is fabulous and she sticks out. And there might be a ton of people that are there all the time when I go, but I remember her. And I think about her and how beautiful that is, that she gets up every day and goes, I am pink today. And she just stacks that pink everywhere. And she's older. She's in her 70s probably, and just lights up the room when she walks in. And to me, I'm drawn to that. I'm interested in that. I look at my friends, and my friends are the quirkiest people and the smartest people, and they have lots of great ideas. And to me, that's what I'm drawn to. And I think most people I know tend to be drawn to those differences. But yet in ourselves, we force ourselves so hard to assimilate and to shrink and to not be seen. And there are reasons for that. Sometimes it's being an introvert versus an extrovert. Nothing wrong with that. But there are sometimes deeper wounds that are about trauma that say, don't look at me, don't acknowledge me, let me just make myself small. So think about fitting in as this strange, broken concept. I think back to high school. And in high school, those of you who are in the older range will remember Jordache jeans. And Jordache jeans were these jeans that everyone wore, and they were so expensive, and they were straight up and down. There was not room for a curve in any pair of Jordache jeans. And you would have to lay on the bed, and you'd have to pull that zipper up, and you would hurt your finger, and you would squeeze into those jeans, and then suddenly you look like Kate Moss, because that's who everybody wanted to look like then. And the problem was that most of our bodies weren't really made for Jordache jeans. Mine certainly was not. So I learned a lesson when I put on those jeans. And the lesson was, you aren't really like other people. You don't really fit in these the same way. And that message stayed with me and told me I wasn't as good as other people because my body didn't look like the way it was supposed to look, because the Jordache jeans were really hard to get on. And then in my 40s, I was single and I started dating. Now, this is in the era of Nicki Minaj and Cardi B and these beautiful plus size women that, not really plus size in the traditional sense, but curvy. And all of a sudden, my body was in vogue and I was attractive. And it really struck me, and it went, how did I go from being not good enough to suddenly a hot commodity when my body didn't really change that much? And the idea is that it was external. It wasn't internal. And if I had accepted my body all along, it wouldn't have mattered how the world around me reacted. So I think back to how many decades did I spend thinking I wasn't good enough because I couldn't assimilate, right? So I want you to examine your own views about yourself and think about, are they about what other people make you feel? Or are you doing it to yourself? I think about some of the women that I've seen, some beautiful, amazing women. And there are two that come to mind in this conversation. One was a little under 5 feet, and one was a little over 6 feet. And these were brilliant, sharp, colorful women. But they both had issues with their height, big issues, to the point that my beautiful 6 foot goddess would bend herself over to be smaller, would agonize over dating about whether or not she would be taller than the person she was with. And my smaller person agonized that she didn't take up enough space and that she might be disregarded by other people because of her height. But yet, none of that really mattered when I saw them. When we sat couch to chair, didn't even think about their height because it didn't matter in our interaction. And to them, it mattered all the time. That's disordered. That's not okay. That you are worried about something that you have no control over. You can't get taller and you can't get shorter. So why would you agonize over it? And what I have to think is that somewhere along the way, somebody said something, somebody treated them differently, and they internalized that and went, I'm less than because of this thing about me that I can't change. So every day they chose suffering over acceptance. We're going to stop that. We're going to stop that in our work together. And we're going to stop that in general over time in the world. I'm committed. Think about this. When you look at a grove of trees and you see the trees, and they're all different, different kinds of trees and different colored leaves and shaped trunks and small and big. You don't look at the trees and determine their worthiness. That tree is big. That's a better tree. That tree is small. It's a better tree. That tree has red leaves or green leaves. They're just trees. You look at their uniqueness and you go, I think I would want that small green leaf tree in my front yard. That resonates with me. But you don't pick their worthiness. You don't decide that that tree is better than another tree because of the way that it looks. We would never do that. But yet we do that with our own view of ourselves and sometimes with our view of others. It's a very dangerous way to think because it reduces us to something that really sometimes we can't even change. You can't change the color of your skin. You can't change who you love. But yet people will determine that you're lesser because of those things. That world will be there as much as we try to change it. But don't perpetuate it in yourself. Don't absorb it. There are some of the old things that I love, the old examples of milk is more valuable when it turns to cheese, and grapes are more valuable when they turn to wine. That when these things go through processes and they get changed, that their value goes up. Those are really important to think about because think about one of the things that we criticize ourselves for. And I have a lot of people who do this. People have a lot of shame about their mistakes. People have a lot of suffering about the things that they might have done in their life. And I've got a lot of them. And over time, you're going to get to hear a lot of those stories. But I don't attach shame to them. I don't attach them as scars that I should hide. I look at them rather as parts of my value and parts of my experience. It's so interesting. I have people when they come to our office is they don't want a young therapist. And I realize what that is they think I want someone who's also had experiences who won't judge me for mine. And interestingly enough, a lot of the young therapists come with quite a bit of history sometimes. But we are afraid of being judged for the lives that we've lived and the mistakes that we've made. And that's a societal construct. Oh, look, they're broken, they're damaged, they're wounded, they're messed up. And in reality, how you come back from those things determines everything. You're not a victim of the things that happened to you. You're somebody who learned and has wisdom. That's those elders we were talking about, right? Somebody who has wisdom and who's been through it and can tell you about it, maybe even how to avoid it. That's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of the experiences that I've had that have bent me in a certain way, like a certain kind of tree, but don't make me less worthy. So it's so interesting to think about who we are as humans. And I like the example of the mosaic. That if you've ever seen a mosaic on the side of a building, it's a million pieces of broken glass arranged in a pattern that when you step back and you look at it and you go, wow, that's beautiful. And then when you look up close, there are just all these pieces of broken glass. So if you look at someone and you see a piece of them, understand it's a piece of a whole, of a mosaic, right? I am not a mentally ill person. Now, having a mental illness, you can look at my mosaic and see that in there. So think about yourself. Are you looking at one piece and focusing on it? Or are you looking at how all the pieces come together? I think your pieces all put together are probably pretty good when you step back and look at them. But the Problem is, you're too close and you're too focused on a couple of those pieces. And you have to know what they are. But you also have to know whether or not those are things you change or things you have to accept. Sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. So, why is it so hard to change? Why is it we have New Year's resolutions and then we fail? And then we have the same one again next year. Why is it so hard? There's a pretty simple answer. And the simple answer is that our nervous systems want things to stay the same, even if our brains and our thoughts don't. We inherently fear change. We inherently fear disrupting our patterns. But that's the very thing we have to do to make anything different in our lives is we have to disrupt our patterns and we have to do something different. And that sets us on fire. Now, once it starts rolling, that change feels amazing sometimes. It feels good. It feels liberating. But I'll use the example of divorce. There are many people that I talk to that are in marriages that we try to repair. And there does come a point in some relationships where we say, it isn't going to be repaired. It probably shouldn't be repaired. I have to get out. And there's all kinds of suffering around the idea of that change. But most people who make that change and have the divorce and have the courage to go through all of those things feel this incredible liberation on the other side. And very, very few regret it. So it's a great example of how changing is so scary and so painful and so disruptive. But if we don't change, we stay where we are. So choose what hard you want to have. Do you want to have the hard of living day to day in a life that doesn't feel like you? Or do you want to take a leap and do something different that might feel weird and strange and ultimately exhilarating? So there's a poem that I really like called Fear by Khalil Gibran. And it's a short one. I'm going to read it to you because I think it really sums up what we're talking about here. And it says, Fear. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled, from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean. And I love that. That is exactly what we're talking about. You are right here because you are standing out looking at the ocean and wondering, and where you belong is in the place in the ocean, in your life, in a place that feels good. We have to make changes in the right direction. And sometimes we're not sure even what direction to go in. So I want to introduce the idea of a personal value that I have in my values. And I want you to introduce it into your values. Or maybe it's there and I want you to feed it. But it's curiosity. Curiosity is the single biggest thing that we use to conquer fear. And curiosity is where we explore something without any expectation or without any connection to the outcome. And I'm going to give you an example. I had a person that was in her 30s and as a patient, and she decided a long time ago that she didn't want to have children. And it was part of her identity. I'm not having kids. I'm never going to have kids. And then she got a partner, and her partner wanted to have children. And she really loved her partner, and she really wanted to be with her. And she came to me and she said, I need to figure out what I really feel here. I've always believed that having kids was not for me. So we dug around and we found fear. She was afraid that her child would be, in her words, like her, because she had suffered with depression and anxiety for most of her life. So that fear prevented her from even exploring the idea that that wouldn't be true, that might not be true. So what we did is we got curious and we started to look into the research about how mental illness is passed down or not passed down, and how the risk factor might affect her actual chances of having a child like her, and also what she actually felt. And then we had to get into big questions about, was there really anything that wrong with you that you can't have a child like you, right? We had to get real curious. And the only way to get past all the fear was to get really curious about questioning why the fear was even there in the first place. She ended up making a different decision. She ended up deciding that she did want children and she had shut that part off out of fear. But the fear had been formed decades earlier and she never questioned it. She never got curious about it. She just accepted it as true. So I wonder, what are you afraid of? That is a fear based in childhood, your child's mind, based in teenage years? Are a lot of the things that you're afraid of even really still scary? And they're usually not. When we are wounded or traumatized, we get traumatized at that certain point in our development. And a lot of times the memories are held in us at that point. You know, people who are told by a parent that they are worthless or that they're no good, 30 years later, still might feel that way because they hold it with their child's mind instead of processing it with the adult mind that they live in now. So we can look back at our life and we can see chapters. I was a child then. I'm an adult now. We have all these chapters in our life. We have the chapter of when we were born, the chapter of when we went to school, the chapter of when maybe we got married or we went to school or we got a certain job. Some people's chapters are by their relationships in their life. Doesn't even matter. But there are these natural points when you look back at your life and you can see your own chapters. And it's so interesting to think about how different you were in each one of those chapters, how different your life felt, what a different person you were. So what you might have processed at 15 versus what you process now, you're not even the same person. That was a different chapter. But yet a lot of us hold shame about certain chapters of our life. Oh, that's when I was promiscuous. Oh, that's when I was using drugs. Oh, that's when I wasn't a good partner. That's when I wasn't the best mother. And those are things that we hold inside as these dark marks of shame, either out loud or inside, it doesn't matter. And what I want to teach you is to understand your life in chapters, but also do that without attaching shame. Think about when you read a biography from someone who's famous or successful. You hear all of the stories of how they got there, and they're not all beautiful. And then at the end, you go, wow, what a life that person had. You don't go, when they were a teenager, they did cocaine. No, you look at the sum total of that person and you see their journey and their travels and you go, wow, look where they got. Apply that logic to yourself and think about the things that you're shameful about or the things that you're hiding in those chapters that you don't share or you don't claim as valid or appropriate. The absence of shame is one of the principal elements in being mentally healthy. Identify what you're shameful about, and we'll get to that in another episode for sure. So, what we're going to talk about now is the first thing that I talk about in almost every first session that I have with a new patient. So, it's a real good place for us to start in the work that we're going to do. And the topic is self-talk. Every single one of us has a voice inside of us that guides us through the day. It's our voice. And it wakes us up in the morning and tells us about how we feel. It drives us in conversation. It guides us in our work. It reminds us how to be with our children. But our self talk is there. I have never met anyone in all of my years of this work who did not have active self talk. So, your voice that you use to tell yourself how to feel or what to think is yours. It's you hear, but it's not really yours. Your talk, your self talk, is a synthesis of every voice that you have ever heard your whole life. I want you to think about that. How many negative things that you've heard in your life? How many times people might have put you down or judged you? Or how many times that you believed you might be less than, or not good enough, or compared yourself to someone else? That voice inside of you is always chattering away, but it's feeding you messages that might not be aligned with who you really are and what you really believe. So if you walk into a room and 100 people tell you that you're brilliant and one person tells you that you're stupid, that stupid voice resonates, and we think about it. We go, wait, they're wrong. Are they wrong? Did I do something wrong? Self-talk is like that. It's absorbed all of those voices, and it makes sure it throws them up to you at just the right moment. Before you walk in a room to do something important at work, that voice might tell you, they think you're stupid. And I remember before I was a PhD, I did a presentation at a conference, and I looked on the roster right before I walked in, and I realized I was the only person speaking that was not a doctor. And I remember that moment where I had to decide to go in with that lesser than attitude or go in and hold my own. And I made the right decision. I went in and I went, I know stuff and I'm going to talk about it. And then there was a poll afterwards where everybody got to pick their favorite speaker. And it was me. And I was the one that wasn't a doctor yet. And it really reinforced that message in me, is that I could have chosen to walk in there less than, or I could have chosen to walk in there equal. And I had to make a decision in my self-talk to make sure I got that right. And it was a really good thing I did. But it's hard to make that decision over and over again when you're fighting that battle in yourself. There's a thing called cognitive dissonance, and it manifests sometimes in believing two things about yourself at the same time. I'm good enough, I'm not good enough. I'm capable, I'm not capable. I think I'm okay, but they don't like me. There are these two things in us that fight. You can call it the angel and the devil on your shoulder, your head and your heart, your logic, your reason. It doesn't even matter. But the people that I see that are suffering the most are the people that those two voices fight constantly and tell them two different things. And they don't even think about it. They just think it's their self-talk. It's their voice. It's their reality. I really do suck. No, I'm awesome. And it's called an unstable sense of self. But it's always easier to see when you ask people, what does that voice tell you about yourself? And you hear all these different messages. That's exhausting. That's confusing. So think about your self-talk when you wake up in the morning. That's my favorite one. When you wake up, do you take a deep breath and go, ugh, another day. I don't want to do this. I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this. Imagine when that's the first thing you think in the morning, and then you drive yourself through the day with that. Every single thing you do is heavy. Everything is exhausting. If you wake up and start with, I don't want to do this. What if instead you slid your feet to the side of the bed and you made yourself sit there for just 20 seconds and said, another day above ground. I'm here. I'm going to go give what I can give. It may not be great, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to kill it. I'm going to do it. The difference in those 2 points of view is extreme. And think of your self-talk as a parenting of sorts. When we have really good parents, you have a good balance of kindness and firmness. Somebody who's really nice to you when you don't feel well, but somebody who pushes you when you need to be pushed. That's what your self-talk needs to be. Kind and firm. Both of those things. You need to push yourself to keep going, but you need to be kind to yourself. So I want you thinking about the idea of your self-talk as this beautiful place for you to start working on yourself, and this place for you to start thinking about how I can change. There's a book that I'm going to recommend to you, and I'm usually going to recommend you a book. I'm going to wade through all of the books till I find you the good books. And it's about finding authenticity and finding how to shape that voice in a healthy way. And the book is called The Fifth Agreement. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz and his son, Don Jose Ruiz. And it's 5 aligning principles. So when you need help to change your self-talk, this book is short and cheap and gives you ideas about how to align yourself to the right way of thinking, the healthy way of thinking. And we're actually going to give this book out to 3 of our listeners if you are the first 3 to suggest topics. So you can go to our Instagram and you can suggest topics, things that you want us to explore here. Also things that you might want more assistance on or support. And the very first 3 to give those topics are going to get a copy of the book mailed to them. But check it out. I think it's a good resource to talk about where we are. So what are our takeaways today? Our takeaways are, you and I, we're here for a journey together, 53 minutes a week. This does not replace therapy. This is not traditional therapy. If you are having a mental health disorder and you are having serious struggles, get help. You can even reach out to us on Instagram. We are glad to provide resources. But if you are here every week, 52 times a year, we can change one small little way that you look at something. We can change one small little way that you might feel about yourself. It's a real good start. Also, the takeaway is that you're not alone. 1 in 4 people struggle. More than that, struggle. Most of us have struggles. Our way of viewing the world and our perspective contributes to that. That's the thing we do have the power to change. Life is hard. Bad things happen. Suffering is naturally human, but it can be decreased by paying attention to your internal life, how you think about things, how you behave. Your self-talk is the way to clear the rain and find your sunshine. Let's start there. I want you to embrace authenticity, the real you, whether it's zany or quiet, whether it's rainbow colored or dressed all in black. Let's find it and let's bring it out. Also, we learned that our minds are not always a great neighborhood to walk around in alone. Let's find allies, let's find voices, and let's find mirrors to help us stay on the right track. Find your mentors, your healers, and rethink your own ideals. Show up here to learn more about truthful ways to look at yourself. So, for next time, our next episode is going to be about connecting to the life you want. It's about change, hope, and priorities. And I'm going to give you some strategies on how to create change, how to find hope, and how to prioritize the things that can actually make your life different. So thank you, my sunshines, for coming and for watering the seeds in you to grow yourself. See you next time.